Hello, everybody, and welcome to M2O TV. We have a very special guest with us today. Tricia Sinon Murray is the owner of All About Ease Organizing, an LGBTQ women-led business based out of Denver, Colorado. Her process is enthusiastic and high energy. She teaches with kindness, helping her clients stay focused and cheering them on the entire way. Tricia is a self-proclaimed minimalist who moved herself and her two kids into a 200 square foot tiny home in 2020. Not only does she have a Bachelor of Arts degree in interior design, but she's a leader in the organizing community, a fellow lover of the color purple, as you can see, and she's my friend. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you so much. Excited to see you, Schae.
Thanks for being here with us today. I'm so excited to talk to the foremost expert on tiny living. You actually did a conference session at NAFO conference one year, and we were so proud of you. She's a former Chicago member, now living in the Denver area and coming back every now and again, I hear. Do you miss us?
Miss you. I was out there in January last month, visited with a friend and helped downsize someone who had just lost his wife, and
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm going to start out by asking you kind of like the first quintessential question about tiny living. We've been talking about it all month here at Mission to Organize, and just wondering who makes a good candidate for tiny living and why.
Loaded question, but kind of easy question. As many of you maybe have seen some of the tiny house nations, and here's a tip: if you have a Roku streaming device, there is a Tiny House Nation channel now, and it's most of the time when I'm doing housework or dishes streaming in my background, because I always feel like I'm at a different process in the build out, so I can hear different tips. But there's been families on it, there's been individuals, there's been couples, there's been people with their pets. I think really who makes the perfect candidate is the person who's mindful and is aware of the tiny house opportunity, that maybe wants to live lighter on the planet, wants to have a lower impact on the planet, wants to live with less and have less responsibilities so they can go out and do all of the fun things, which is why we moved to Denver, because, oh my God, people have fun here all year round and they do all kinds of things. So for me, this is hot spring season, but for most everybody else, it's ski and snowboard season. But I did go skiing last month too, so there's that. But yeah, anybody who just wants to, and it's not even the extreme minimalism, it's just to have less responsibility, less stuff to mind and take care of. And yeah, it's just so exciting also to be able to craft your own environment. I think that's new to a lot of people as well in this realm, that you really get to have a hand in designing it if you want to. There are places that you can go that you can pick from this or that style. Maybe they'll have like 5 or a dozen different designs. Because of my design background, I designed my own tiny house after I started speaking to tiny house festivals and the Global Tiny House Conference. I was able to see all of the different things and design it for us specifically. So that was really cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, it's funny at Mission to Organize, I'm like, it's when you have, it's a lot of responsibility to have a lot of things. Like everything that you're bringing into your house, you need to consider, like, am I willing to clean this up? Am I willing to put this away? It's a lot of work to have a lot of things, and the less things you have, the less responsibility and just kind of like the easier life that you have. So I love that you said that. I know that, the reduce, reuse, recycle mentality is very important to
Here's
you.
the fourth one to that too. I heard within the last year you can add on a fourth is refuse. Just because something is available to you or coming to you free, maybe from a conference or something like that, you don't necessarily need it.
Mm-hmm. Or because you have a coupon that makes it only 50 cents, right?
Yes. You can stock it
Yeah.
up to the level of where you can store it all, we'll say, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. It probably gives people who are listening a little bit of an idea of like, am I a good candidate or not? And, does this make sense for me or not? As I said in your opening, you did this with 2 kids. So, it's not just for single people. It's not just for retired people. Really anybody can transition into tiny living if they're ready to make that step. So thank you for sharing that.
I had a 98-year-old client last week, that we moved into her newest senior living facility. And she was kind of blown away when I told her that my tiny house has 3 bedrooms. She was like, what? And I said, yeah, 2 lofts for my boys, 13-year-old, 16-year-old, my first floor age in place bedroom. And we have a fold out sofa. So when we have guests, we can fit 7. So yeah, amazing.
That is wild.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
And that really gives people a good idea, because I think that's the other concern is like, am I going to be able to invite people over for dinner or have guests or things like that? So that's really good to know that you're able to make that work in only 200 square feet. That's crazy. I'm so impressed and have loved watching your journey to creating this life for yourself. It's really great.
Yeah. Awesome. We are in a tiny house case study now. It's 200 square feet. The tiny house is a footprint of 300 square feet, and including the second floor lofts and my rooftop deck outside, it's actually 600. So I think it's going to be doable.
Wow. That's so cool. I love those outdoor spaces that tiny homes have. I think that is so great, because that's the other thing is I feel like you feel more connected to the outdoors, when you're living tiny. So that's really cool. I've seen some cool ones.
Yes, so many. And Zach Giffen, who is one of the guys, or the guy who helps build the tiny houses, he said, I feel like every tiny house should have a rooftop deck. And I thought, yes, absolutely. So we have that because wherever we land, I wanted us to have a sense of private outdoor space and not people like peering at us. So.
Yeah, and I know people put tiny homes in very secluded areas. It's not just for kind of community living. You can put them kind of everywhere, which is pretty cool. One of my employees is she built a tiny home on the property of her in-laws so that they can stay there when they come to visit. So
that's so cool.
Yeah. Another way to use tiny living.
What they call it. Yeah, accessory dwelling unit. That's the big thing that happened in Denver or Colorado this past year, is that our governor Polis legalized tiny houses in all of Colorado. So it's going to be easier to have an accessory dwelling unit in your backyard and either get income to help you with your mortgage as your home, or extend it to other people and allow others to have an inexpensive place to live, a place to park it. Because I think that's the biggest challenge with going tiny, is that you need to find a place. So I'm in the process of finding a place to park it in the interim, but I am going to be actively looking for land the rest of this month to find some place to permanently park it, because then the space is my own and we can do with it what we want.
Yes. Part of being independent. I love it. Well, we've talked a little bit about you moving into this 200 square foot tiny home in 2020. Just curious, like, what are the biggest lessons that you learned from moving into your own tiny home and this other one that you're currently building?
So I think the biggest thing was you have to be willing to look at all of your things and decide really what are the essentials. What must I absolutely have? For me, in the tiny house that I designed, a jet tub. It might sound crazy, but I miss my tub so much. And it's not like that's something I could take with me, because with me, it's like one in, one out. Do I like this purple top better than the ones I already have at home? To want to get rid of those to absorb this one, sort of thing. But it's really boiling it down to the minimalist things, because we got started on this journey when we got an RV after my mom passed and started to travel in it. Everything's built in. You bring the bare minimum. You throw in clothes for a week or two. You put food in the fridge, and you can always stop along the way and get whatever you need. So for us, that started to be the thought process of, if I didn't pack it, I guess I didn't really need it. And learning to live in that smaller space with the kids was fun because they're only little for so long, and I'm sure families want to have that closeness with them. And so it continues when they become teenagers, and you're just like, but yeah, that really was probably, even as an organizer, the biggest thing for me to wrap my head around is like, what do I want there? What can I use? What can I not need? What can I live without? So that's probably the easiest mindset to kind of wrap your head around, is you get to curate exactly what you have. Whereas sometimes we're in houses and we have these rooms and we appoint them and we decorate them and we surround ourselves with the things that make us feel good. Maybe it's stuff from our travels, but it's such a finite small space that you really get to have an active hand in doing exactly that, but on just a much smaller scale.
Yeah. And were there any, like, what about the actual, like, building process, like working with the people who, like, build it and, like, expressing your needs to them and, like, all of that? Like, how did you learn how to do that? I know you said from some of the conferences that you attended and stuff like that, but how would our listeners, be able to navigate that process?
So I started my process and I designed my house and I sent my design to my builder, and then he popped it into his program that he used so he could make it 3D. I'm visual, and with this background, I was able to see what my space would look like, but other people might need a hand in that so they can really see, is it large enough? Is this area big enough? Do I want an eat-in kitchen, or do I want a living room to enjoy and spend with friends and family? So there's trade-offs. I think the biggest one, though, was figuring out how many people are going to share the space, who's going to share the space, and then you can look through. There's builders around the country. I found mine because a friend who I met at a conference that I spoke at and was a vendor at, she actually moved her tiny house down to this town in Colorado called Durango, where they have a tiny house community, and he was the builder down there. So that's how I found mine. And then I did go through a couple because one of them wasn't able to build the way that I wanted it to. I chose to use SIPs, which are structurally insulated panels. It's basically an ice cream sandwich of here's all the insulation, here's the inside wall, here's the outside wall. And they kind of puzzled it together and just built up the outside of it in like a day. So it was pretty amazing. But that's because for me, the Colorado winters, it'll stay cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter because of that insulation. There's lots of people that can build them. I've been building the interior of it myself. I would say start with plumbing. That was probably our biggest, 2020, hindsight's 2020. We would have done the bathroom and the plumbing first.
Okay.
And learn.
Good tip. That was kind of what I was getting at. I'm like, I know there's some pitfalls here somewhere that people just wouldn't even think about, when they're thinking about building their tiny home. So thank you for sharing your experience. Yeah. And I love that you can customize it and really like make it your own. And like you said, think about what are the trade-offs. Like, do I want this or would I rather have this? Because you have to choose. It's one or the other,
And if it's really important to you, you make both work. Where there's a will, there's a way, I feel.
All right. You heard it right here. Tricia said it, so. People are going to be calling you and be like, yeah, how do I do that again? So probably not everybody is ready to take the leap into tiny living. So what would you give as far as recommendations for just like downsizing if people, maybe they live in a 4-bedroom house, but they want to downsize into a condo? Because that is also, a big step for a lot of people who are retiring, who, their kids are out of the house. And we see that a lot in the organizing field. So
I think it's still the same thing. One of the suggestions is I developed a tiny house checklist for people who are considering it. So this is one of the points in there, is that you can try to live in one room of your house, and it could be living room, a bigger bedroom, something along those lines, just to see in that smaller footprint, are you going to be comfortable? Do you need to expand a little bit, or can you go even a little bit smaller? It'll just depend on your experience. And my suggestion is to try it for a weekend. If you want to be adventurous, try it for a week. Another big thing to consider is, where are all of our consumables going to go and be stored? So your bathroom stuff, your kitchen stuff, your pantry, whatever, cleaning products. See if you can live in half or utilize only half of your refrigerator, because that's also going to be smaller. And so can you meal plan? Do you want to eat out more because you won't have the expense of such a large house? Maybe you can funnel some of that budget into more fun things like that. It's really, like you say, the trade-off, but it also causes you to think, what could we do? Because when you think of it in that realm, there's so many possibilities. You don't have to get rid of this stuff. You get to do this, so then you get to do all the other things, which is, I think, the fun part.
Yes. And we've also experienced a lot, through this downsizing process, that, a lot of people are holding on to like memories and things like that. So oftentimes the parents will be calling the kids like, hey, do you want this trophy? Or like, do you still need this like Letterman jacket? And if you want them, like, you need to come get them. But
by Saturday.
Yeah. So, do people sometimes have storage units when they have tiny homes to like hold things like that, that are kind of more sentimental that they want to keep, or is there a solution for that?
Not in my experience, but I built my bed. So I've got a queen bed, which is 60 by 80 inches. And that space, I call it the princess in the pea bed, because my bed's like 2.5 feet off the floor. That under area, I call it my under bin. That's all my storage for my camping gear, our outdoor fun stuff. It's got 5 pairs of snowshoes in there because I want to be able to have friends come with me. So This minimalist does have 5 pairs of snowshoes, but I share. Sharing is caring. But I find that with the sentimental items, I did bring in my mom's green desk that had been around before I was even born, because I have older siblings, and that's in the tiny. But this is how we get to decide what we want to surround ourselves with. So I think when it's the excitement of, decorating and appointing a new place, and yes, it's much smaller, but they get to decide all of those things. And I read a great book 2 years ago, I think the second winter of the pandemic, about sentimental organizing, where people are maybe attached to their past life where they were a swimmer and they got all these medals or trophies, like you mentioned. Once people decide that whatever category it is, and that they want to have it be downsized, or right-sized is my favorite word, when they can find some place that it can go serve and they can donate it to, or know that something's going on to have a second, third, fourth life, then it's much easier to downsize. Like my best friend, we went through his wife's clothing, and it was so hard for him because I could see the wheels churning, where he was thinking, I saw her in that then, she wore this to that type thing. But once we figured out, okay, who can this serve, as far as like, we took stuff to a local thrift store that benefited a domestic violence shelter and gave those people the opportunity to come and shop for things that they didn't have if they needed to leave in the middle of the night. But once that was on the plate, it was like, okay, so let's give them this, let's give them this. It was such a different focus, and it felt so much better that things were going to go on and have another purpose. So that makes it easier. So if people can find, maybe it's a pet charity, or it goes to help your favorite hospital, or mine, the one that I love here in Golden, it feeds the neighborhood because the thrift store is connected to a food pantry on the other side of the building. So everything that I get to donate there for my clients goes to serve and feed everybody. And that's really something I think people can easily get on board.
Absolutely. The minute you say that, they're like, how about this? What about this? They're pulling things from all
it's
areas
like
of the house. Yeah.
Yes. They're like keeping more stuff into the car. Yeah. So they get excited. And then they don't feel bad. Sometimes people get stuck on, I paid so much for this, but the money's gone. You've enjoyed it up till now. Why not let somebody else enjoy it from this point forward?
Absolutely. And there are, places that'll help you with consignments and, selling things. And though most of the time it's not worth the time or the energy that it takes. But if there are those few, luxury items, that is always a possibility. And with sentimental things, you can always take a picture. Take a picture
Yes.
of that shirt, t-shirt, that you got from that concert or whatever it is. And then you're able to let it
upload it
yeah. I don't know. And that's the other thing that you could do inside of a house. Instead of a tiny home, instead of having like a bunch of pictures, you could have like one digital photo frame and just have like pictures like flipping on the photo frame, so you still get to see and enjoy all of those things, but just in one little
made the memories
space on the wall. Yeah.
Because we'll have the memories, we just don't need the stuff anymore. That's, I think, the biggest thing.
Exactly. Well, these are all great tips. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to toss in and add for anyone who's thinking about tiny living or just like curious on like how it works?
If they can, I would talk to everybody at the festivals and the places like the global conferences. We'd have like happy hours afterwards for the speakers and everybody that attended. But I would ask everybody who was in that industry or living in one or had one or this or that, what would you do differently? And I got my best nugget from my friend Katrina, who helped me find my builder. She said I would have built on the widest trailer possible, because the average is 8.5 feet wide. The widest is 10 feet wide. And you don't think it's a lot, but when you walk into a space in my main room, when you come in through the purple French doors, you walk into my main living space and it's 16 by 10, which is huge. It's got the kitchen counter on one side, the living area in the other, and we've got a small expandable table also within that space. So again, where there's a will, there's a way. You can craft whatever you want, but I say definitely give yourself that larger footprint. If you're even considering it, smaller versus larger, go a little larger, because then you'll have more room to breathe, more room to entertain more people or whatever, more room for your pets, more room for your hobbies.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely in that camp. If I ever decided to take that step, that would be my option, is to take the bigger of the two. And it gives you more rooftop space, right?
Yes. And you could put solar. Solar's better up there too, with a little bit bigger of a footprint.
I like it. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your tips today. As far, you mentioned reaching out to people who know, about tiny living, who have done it before, and, reading maybe blogs and stuff like that. So just want you to share with everybody how they can reach you and all about Ease Organizing.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. So like I mentioned before, I do have a tip sheet that helps people either get through their downsizing process to go tiny, or even consider, is this for me? So they can email me at Tricia, and it's Tricia at allabouteaseorganizing.com. I'd be happy to shoot you the tip sheet on either one, or even just have a conversation, because I love organizing, minimalism, tiny homes, all the things. I'm happy to chat all day, every day. It's so much fun for me.
Is a really great offer for everybody. You guys should all take advantage of that. I'm emailing you right now. Can I get my tip sheet?
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you also have a great website that I saw earlier. So definitely check out allabouteaseorganizing.com. And Tricia, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your wise words of wisdom on tiny living. I know that there's a lot of people out there whose wheels are turning and thinking that this might be in their future. So thanks for inspiring us all.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I adore you.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time on M2O TV. Bye.